Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm doing Schlock and Not Much Awe. That's the title of my presentation. It's on the Maripol maternity ward, the metals market, Hailey Bieber's mini stroke, and an update on cricket legend Shane Warne. And I'm going to try to do this in different parts. I so appreciated some of you listening to my first show in a long time, and I really am promising it's not going to be as long, and I want to really make these in different parts or a little bit more concise because it's too much for the viewer and myself. So no sooner did I say that the great Wuhan, Ukraine sandwich was a big sandwich with a digital dollar in the middle, or a reset, if you like, of a digital currency. Then the very next day, the Biden administration announcing it's taking a big step toward a government-backed digital currency, the U.S. Central Bank digital currency, or CBDC. And this story was in NBC, so it's more of a mainstream outlet. Well, it is a mainstream outlet. A lot of these stories had been circulating in business and financial news for a while, with the central banks looking at them. So that's how I knew this was definitely on the table. But the very next day, NBC's covering this, with the Biden administration definitely throwing its support behind research and development. And again, the development has been in place for several years now. So this is a real possibility. How soon they can implement is another question. But again, to confirm what I was saying, in the background of the schlock and awe that we've been seeing out of Russia and Ukraine is a reset to our financial means, something that will definitely affect us. Now, schlock and awe, it's a play on shock and awe of 2003, the U.S.'s invasion of Iraq, with George Bush announcing here the military strategy of shock and awe to invade Iraq. And there was, at that time, there was some protests against the U.S. doing this, but not much. Nothing to the level you're seeing now. And I worked in big organizations on Fortune 500 companies at the time, big ones, and I can tell you that there was no chief executive coming out pro or against this. Nothing to what you're seeing on LinkedIn, with one company after another coming out in favor of Ukraine and against Russia. So it's such a contrast in so many levels. With I think too, with I guess the audience approach to these events, where back then in 2003, we all accepted it as a fait accompli. We didn't question the narrative. We took it all in the background here with all this green light. These were the green flashing lights of the shock and awe, this military prowess and display of technology by the U.S. into Iraq. It was supposed to shock and awe the invading country into submission. And we took it all in. I mean, yes, there were some protests against it, but again, nothing to the level you are seeing now with Russia invading Ukraine. And I'm calling this schlock and awe now, because back then we might have been a little shocked ourselves, but there's an element of schlock here, where schlock is something that is a facsimile of something. Say a handbag, say a Gucci bag. It's a facsimile, and some can be done amazingly well, where you think the Gucci fake is the real thing. But a schlock it's so obviously cheap, and the dyes are awful, and it is so inferior as a product that it's schlock. And I'm calling schlock fake shock, almost, in this sense, that we are really getting, again, one round of fake shock and hand-wringing over another. And I've been in the news business 30 years, and when you see enough of it, you really can recognize it very quickly. And I had to laugh. Again, is a point of comparison between George Bush with his earnest shock and awe. Look at the deer in the headlight look. We now have Kamala, which is just over the top fake shock here. And I can't do her delivery perfectly, but we all watched. I'll try to imitate it. And she starts, we all watched the television coverage just yesterday. That's on top of everything else we know and don't know. Yet, based on what we've just been able to see, and because we've seen it or not, doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Okay, all right, Kamala. And so she who is the vice president is referring to the television coverage as proof that Russia is the big bad boy. So the television coverage, and you think she would have other evidence to go on, but we're not getting that. And we're certainly not getting real evidence about the Maripol maternity ward, which again, to me, is schlock. This isn't real. Um, Anti-Spiegel, which is a German outlet, it's sort of like, I guess, The Onion or something, except even more serious, has broken down the footage of the Maripol maternity ward. And Russia itself has come out and said that that was evacuated in February. But they've done an amazing job, I think, of really breaking down the news footage of this. And just one aspect, and I recommend going there if you really want to go deep digging. I don't have the time to analyze the whole thing. But if you go here to this link, you'll see it in all its glory. And they just simply refer to the same woman who appears in it several times wearing different things. And they also refer to the fact that there must have been multiple cameras deployed, like on a movie set or a TV set, because you get her at the top of the staircase, at the bottom of the staircase, here, there. These are more the techniques you'd see in a TV or film production than you would in a raw news footage. So I'm going to just leave you with that. I don't buy the story. If I thought for 1 minute that real mothers and babies were being killed, I'd be disgusted and upset, but I don't. But again, it's creating the schlock. And the queen of schlock, Megyn Kelly, several weeks ago, before the invasion, was, coming out earnestly. And the schlock goes with the facial expressions. Oh, yes, Putin wants to recreate the USSR. He does, really. Well, if you would go back and listen to her interviews from 2017 with Putin, which I've listened to them all. I've listened to the unedited ones. He does not say once that he wants to recreate the old Soviet Union. So I don't know where she's getting this. But she was also quoted on the Today Show, which she was hosting at the time, as saying that Putin was very personable when the cameras were off. There was no mention of, oh gosh, warning. You would have thought that having done several interviews with Putin back in 2017 for NBC, and then, for her podcast several weeks ago saying, oh no, he wants to create the Soviet Union, you would think there would be a record of this from, 4 years ago, warning people that, this guy is a megalomaniac madman who wants to redo this. But she didn't say anything like that. And in fact, quite the opposite. He was very personable. So we are still deep in this sea of, not sea, but we're in this very the fog of war, right? And the television, you can almost look at this picture analogous to, say, a television coverage where you're getting bits and bobs above the fog here, above the fog, but we really don't know what's going beneath that. We've got one thing here and there, and it's connecting the dots a little bit, and it's sort of like our Wuhan, Ukraine sandwich. There's a lot of fog in between these points. And I just want to have a brief word on yellow journalism. It is not a fashionable phrase. It's not something we know about, but if you do, study journalism, this really came, this was a fad. This was a thing in the late 1800s. With different wars that were going on. And it's based a little off this cartoon of this little man baby with a cigar who's seeing like scary things everywhere. So there's the big boogeyman behind there and the scary cat and yellow. And there's a psychological effect that yellow has on us about caution, the police tape, caution, do not, trespass. Markings on streets, do not cross, they're in yellow for a reason. There's a psychological effect there. And this has been deployed with Russia. It's still going on. I had a laugh at this meme, which again, using yellow, Putin is the new coronavirus. And on that theme, Russia is the thing we want to banish, just like we want to get rid of coronavirus. And I thought this album art from the No Agenda podcast, which again I really recommend, came up with this beautifully, this illustration that 404 not found, Russia, being banished, the economic sanctions and so forth, which how much muscle do they have? Again, with the yellow journalism, it would, seem to suggest that these huge economic sanctions are going to hurt the country. And oh my God, isn't it terrible? It's horrible. But when you look at it, their economic sanctions that are leading to higher oil prices, of which Russia is a major producer. So those higher oil prices are ultimately going to benefit Russia to some degree. So it might offset maybe some of these other sanctions. So it's not so clear cut. And this is a real example in the latest Economist of the Stalinization of Russia. You can see just the red color, again, a psychological warning and conjuring up the red of the communists. And the Stalinization of Russia with what looks like a tank peeling off bricks, or no, that looks like the tire of the wheel of it, going round and round with this, Russian scary face hanging through the peephole with the cannon, going out. The Stalinization of Russia, again, is that really true? Is that just a gross exaggeration of what's going on? I mean, there's no indication Putin is starting gulags, is there? Or that he's starving the people, or there's pogroms or anything like that. So again, this is yellow journalism. And again, just kind of the skewed reaction. We don't know what's going on in Russia because CNN, BBC, and other major networks have voluntarily stopped broadcasting. Again, it wasn't like Putin kicked them out. They volunteered to leave, with CNN saying that Russia is limiting press freedoms, when the truth of the matter is he's stopping disinformation. Disinformation is part of propaganda, and he doesn't want it in his own country to his own people. The US also had similar laws up until recently, where you could not use propaganda internally to Americans. So this is not such a stretch. He's doing this. And again, I contend, if you're not putting out disinformation, this really isn't even an issue. It's just not an issue. But again, this is, Russia is not found. You're not having the big broadcasters in there. So there's a vacuum. And as we know, nature abhors a vacuum. So it's going to be filled with all kinds of other items and agendas. And again, we are in this fog. What's come out too, it's yellow journalism, but it's also the Fourth Estate. They know to some degree what they're doing is bogative, wrong, lies even. And while we have the yellow journalism of Russia coming out, we had in the last week or so this Project Veritas interview with Matthew Rosenberg. And it was an undercover interview, I might add. And it's worth listening to, because he clearly knows not just about the Russia story, but other stories that are being touted as, the yellow journalism would have you believe are, oh my God, shock, horror, horrible, oh my God, pearl clutching moments. It's just over the top reporting. And he uses that phrase. And I'm going to just leave you to look at that. We are swimming in the seas, swimming in deep seas in Pisces right now. So it's Pisces season. It's the last sign of the zodiac. It's the deepest sign. It's a spiritual sign. It's an emotional sign, very emotional. And we have the Sun, Neptune, Jupiter, and Mercury all now in Piscean waters. And it's the first time we've seen such a transit, such a cluster since the 1850s, before the US Civil War. Mercury has entered Pisces, and Mercury is the planet of communication and commerce and business. So this is not a great sign for Mercury to be in. And it's almost acting as a Mercury retrograde. I can certainly feel it in my own life. It just seems like I'm not communicating in the clearest way. It's hard to get a hold of people. It has a Mercury retrograde feel right now. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this. It has this feel to it. In the last couple of days, on Sunday, we had the sun conjuncting Neptune. So Neptune and the sun are together packing a powerful punch in terms of this fog of war that we're in this fog of information that we're in. So, and the sun is in the gate 36, like Neptune. I've read that before. I'll read it again. It's the gate of crisis, the darkening of the light, the rules of cycles in which decline is a natural but not enduring stage. And it was in line 1. It might have moved to line 2 by the time I got around to actually recording this. Okay, but the rules of cycles in which decline is a natural but not enduring stage. Not enduring stage. Mercury in Pisces, as I said, it's entered Pisces now. So we have that little planet swimming with the fishies in the deep blue sea. And again, Mercury is about communication. It's about commerce. It's about business. It's about exchanging information. And that's really hard to do when you're in waters that you can't see. And you've got Neptune that has been transiting there. And Neptune we think of as a watery planet, when in fact it's a gas planet. So by the very nature of it, there's some deception involved with Neptune. And it's diffuse and dreamy and illusory. And so you're trying to communicate in this environment, that this energetic environment, which is not, you can't see it in the best of times. So Mercury is in gate 37, the gate of friendship, the family, the manifestation, macro and microcosmically, of the organic nature of communities. And we're seeing communities online, aren't we, in social media and so forth. Jupiter is also in here. So Jupiter is expansive. So what we're feeling, what we're seeing, this fog, it's enveloping. It's an expansive quality. It was in gate 63 and it moved to gate 22, a quality of behavior best suited to handling mundane or trivial situations. And I mean, it's this grace channel or grace gate. It's affiliated with that. And you can see the news has sort of died down a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit more temperance to the news flow that we've been hearing since Sunday. Stock market was up. There's some sign of days certainly getting longer in the northern hemisphere, some light kind of penetrating to it. It has a different energy to it. I would say it's a little more relaxed than what we saw last week, a little bit more. I don't know if it's to do with that or not, but just simply observing. And again, in the midst of all this, we have Biden taking a big step toward government-backed digital currency. And I do find it funny, the acronym CBDC for the central bank digital currency, and CBD, where have we heard that before? And again, I don't contend any of this is an accident. I don't think that's an accident that we're having similar initials to the, one of the primary ingredients to marijuana that just happens to be the acronym of this digital currency. So that wraps up part 1, and I will be back with part 2 very soon.